And before I get into public comments and announcements, I should have also read that as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. So anybody for public comments and announcements? First, I'm just going to give it to you, Jeff, too. Oh, this isn't your, never mind, I was thinking it was your meeting.
I have a public comment.
Oh, go ahead.
You want me to? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to everyone here. I just want to announce again, my next office hours will be held on January 31st from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Community Center this time. And then I'd also like to announce that the first date on the 2024 listening tour has been scheduled for February 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Community Center as well. The first group of stakeholders that will be focused on at that meeting is the Restaurant, Bar, and Hospitality Group. Cindy Williams has been a phenomenal asset to me in terms of getting the message out, and she will actually be attending with me to listen and learn from our stakeholders in the restaurant, bar, and hospitality business. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, the Harwich channel. I'm just here to announce that we are now live streaming to YouTube the Select Board meetings. We did start 2 Select Board meetings ago, but we're working out some kinks on some new equipment, but it is up and running. So we will only be doing Select Board meetings as of now. So that will make us be live on YouTube, Harwich Channel 8, Apple TV, Roku, as well as our own live streaming service on the website. So there's no excuse not to watch any Select Board meetings. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Anybody else for public comment? Hi, Emily.
Hi, good evening. Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. I just wanted to come before you this evening to share some information with the public about these vote-by-mail official postcard applications that I know are reaching folks at home. I know they can cause some confusion if folks don't know what they are or why they're receiving them. So under state law, the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office now sends these vote-by-mail applications to all registered voters in the state of Massachusetts before all state and federal elections. So folks receiving these postcards in the mail now are receiving the mailing that is associated with the March 5th presidential primary election. So if people are interested in voting by mail, they can complete and return these postcards to our office. The card gives them the option to select either all calendar year 2024 elections or to individually choose the March presidential primary, the September state primary, or the November presidential election. There are 2 different versions of the card that are circulating. One is going to voters that are enrolled in a political party, and the other version goes to folks who are not enrolled. People who are unenrolled or independent is sort of the more colloquial way folks refer to that designation. The version going to enrolled voters just confirms that they're enrolled in the party, and that if they are requesting a primary ballot, they will automatically receive that party's ballot for the primary. The version going to unenrolled voters does require that the voter select the party ballot they want to receive for a primary election. Anyone wanting to return that must sign it. We have gotten a few unsigned, and unfortunately we cannot process them without a signature, so they must be signed and then returned to us. If folks don't want to vote by mail, they are not required to do anything with these cards. And if anyone does want to vote by mail but misplaces the card, loses the card, we do have blank vote by mail applications available on our website or in our office. So you haven't missed your chance. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns, we're always happy to give more details on the process.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment and announcement?
Good evening, Bob Nickerson, Harwichport. At the Select Board meeting on December 18th, Link Cooper provided comments on the Route 28 sidewalk project. At the close of that discussion, Michael McCaskill asked, when are we going to go to the public on what's going on to happen, or is that it, or Mass DOT? So I'm here to give you some insights as a homeowner on 28 and give you, take a little bit of time to go through some of the details of what we're working on. I'm here to share some of the challenges impacted by homeowners that have faced and continue to face in regards to the project. First, let me say, we and our neighbors are supportive of the sidewalk project. Background, as you're all aware, there's an existing sidewalk from Bank Street to Snow Inn Road. The property owners in this section expected that the sidewalk would be repaired as it is in poor condition with little impact to those homes in that area. For the past 2 to 3 years, when preliminary work was being done, we were told on more than one occasion that we would not be impacted with a new sidewalk. Much to our surprise and disappointment, Mass DOT designed the line to be moved south, located on all of our properties, and you can appreciate our response to this was unfavorable, to say the least. In the section from Bayview Road to Snow Inn Road, there are 6 properties: 611, 1880, 617, 1796, 621, 1815, 623, 1880, 625, formerly Cape Wind and Weather, 1850s. Also, there's a property, 4 Bay Lane, that was formerly 619 Route 28. It's also 1880. As you know, the town of Harwich now has 2 cultural districts, one in Harwich Center and one in Harwich Port, which are designated in January 2023. In the statutory language for cultural districts, Section 3, Chapter 10, Section 58A was amended to include additional wording in the first paragraph. It states, preserve and reuse historic structures, buildings, enhance property values, and foster local development. Keep that in mind when I discuss what's going on. From the perspective of the owners in this stretch of 28, it is apparent that this was not considered by Mass DOT in their redesign of the sidewalk and new line. Mass DOT has moved all poles along this section from the DOT right-of-way to the adjacent properties. Moving the poles has a significant impact to these properties. It is highly likely that the existing trees in this corridor will be removed by Eversource to accommodate the new alignment. In the case of 617 Route 28, my property, the utility line will be moved directly over the existing tree. The white spruce at the lot next door, Bay Lane, is 619, has not been noted on the plans and therefore is concerned by the owner that this tree is to be removed. At 623, the tree is about 40 years old and is marked with a bronze plaque engraved at the base of the tree that says, Memory of Alice Lee Pierce, 1985. This tree has a large crown which is significant in significant jeopardy with the proposed new line. Recap. Public meeting was held on January 17th, 2023. Mass DOT provided an overview of the project and a handout at the meeting. Both of these can be found online at the Harwich website, as well as a transcript of the presentations and questions. Of the 40 to 50 plus attendees, only 4 were homeowners on Route 28, the south side of Route 28. Most of the other attendees came to push for extending the sidewalk to Neal Road. I strongly suspect that Mass DOT scheduled this meeting in January knowing that part-time owners would not be in attendance. At the conclusion of the meeting, plans were available to look at, but no hard copies were provided. We provided comments to Mass DOT Chief Engineer, who was designated in the handout as the point of contact via certified mail in July 2023. We requested project details and the environmental study for this work. We have had no response from her. Our next communication with MassDOT was from the right-of-way department in late November 2023, indicating the land area that would be taken under a permanent easement and temporary easement. No plans were sent with a letter nor any specific details on how our property was to be impacted. I reached out to Lane Cooper, who's been great, by the way, who in turn contacted Thomas Courier, supervising project manager, who did forward a partial plan that included our property. Tom stated 2 utility easements for relocation of overhead wires and 1 temporary easement to reconstruct the end of my driveway apron, which, by the way, is a bluestone driveway apron that we put in. He also states aerial easements provide to the access to the airspace above the edge of your property where overhead lines are located, and they need attention from homeowners, from the owners, Verizon, Eversource, etc. This was also came up during the presentation on the 17th of January, aerial easements. Remember that. My wife did have a conversation with Robert Bell, Mass DOT right-of-way agent who sent the letters on the easements. During the conversation, Mr. Bell stated, "I have never heard of an aerial easement." Okay, so here we have some disconnects, I guess, right? Between Courier and Bell. Since Mass DOT has not sent any requested project information other than the plan of my property, I searched the Mass DOT site for other options. Per the Mass DOT website, I found it stated, requests for information can be made by email, phone, or mail. Peter Martin was listed as the contact. I sent an email to Mr. Martin, Mass DOT Plans and Records Office, requesting the same information I asked in July. I made this request in December 21st, 2023. Again, no response. Seems like a familiar theme at DOT. Also on December 21st, 2023, we retained a Boston attorney to assist us in sorting all this out. I sent a follow-up email to Mr. Martin on January 16th. He did respond saying, "I will look into this and let you know." The next day, on January 17th, Mr. Martin said, "I need to submit a public records request to Mass DOT." So after a month delay in contacting him and 8 months after contacting the engineer in July, I finally get a notice that I have to actually go online and get this information. They could have told me that 8 months ago. All right, so after a month delay and all that, so anyway, I was directed to a website, and I did get the information today, which was 3 days. That was pretty fast. Our attorney has discussed the matter with Robert Bell, Mass DOT right-of-way, who has indicated that during the conversation, the poles are being moved to meet ADA requirements on the sidewalk. Since I'm an engineer, what did I do? I looked at Mass DOT, notes on the sidewalk, wheelchair ramps for designers and construction engineers, E12005. Key points that are in this requirements. A minimum of 4-foot sidewalk complies with 521 CMR, provided is designed with certain additional conditions. The additional conditions must be shown on the plans and include many, but limited to the following: 4-foot minimum width, excluding the curb width. Passing areas are required in any case, or at least a 5-foot minimum width. Mass DOT recommends a walking surface of not less than 5 foot. When the sidewalk is to be constructed adjacent to a curb, it is shown on the plans as 5'6". An unobstructed 3-foot path of travel, excluding curb, must be maintained past any sidewalk obstruction, including but not limited to utility poles, mailboxes, trees, open areas around them, streetlights, traffic signals, precast foundations, etc. In no case shall any sidewalk be constructed with less than 4 foot of walking surface or less than 3 foot to an
Bob, I don't want to interrupt you, but, I mean, I understand there's many regulations involving the sidewalk design, and it's Mass DOT, so maybe this is a better agenda item that we could actually have Link Hooper and possibly representatives from Mass DOT to go over it in more depth. So that I understand that you're...
Well, I didn't know what the mechanism was after the discussion that Link had with you. It was apparent to me that you are not cognizant of the details of this whole project in this level.
The problem is that we don't get to oversee it. It's similar to the problems that we have during the strolls and et cetera, where we would like to close Route 28 for safety purposes, but we don't have responsibility for that road. It's a state road. So all of these things are somewhat out of our control, but I hear you in terms of the difficulties that you're facing. I think...
I only have about 2 paragraphs left. Let me finish this.
If you could sort of wrap it up so we have a joint meeting and...
So the bottom line is the current sidewalk meets ADA. It doesn't meet the ramp parts of ADA, obviously, but it meets the width criteria. And they're moving those poles, because they say it doesn't meet ADA, onto our property with a permanent easement, permanent, forever. and we get no interaction. You can see by my discussions, nobody's responded. It took me 8 months to get a response. So why did I come here? Why did I bring this to your attention? Because I see you as the sentinels for the town of Harwich. You're at the top of the pyramid, okay? You need to know about this. Also, I believe in transparency. You need to know that we're hiring an attorney. You need to know that we're disappointed as landowners that put a lot of money. All those houses, 3 of them have been totally renovated. We have kept old structures to keep the historic feel of Harwich, and we shouldn't be castrated by them putting these lines in our yard. We need help, okay? So I'm going to give you a copy of this
Yeah, that'd be great.
for all of you, and I'm going to give a copy to a gentleman here. And since you don't have time for all this right now, these are copies, so I
Okay.
gave you extra ones.
Great,
And
thank
then,
you.
most importantly, these are copies of the plan in my house, my area, and I've highlighted it so you can understand it. Now, if you look at that, pretend you don't see the highlights. Look, give that to somebody that has not seen anything and is not an engineer to understand what exactly is happening to their yard. I happen to be an engineer, so I have a little more influence in knowing this stuff. I also happen to
So
design-
Bob, they can't hear you at the, so you have to go to the podium to speak, but we appreciate your information, and I do think that we should have a separate agenda topic on this.
I'll be more than happy to come back and talk about it.
Right, thank you,
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Anybody else? Jenny?
Good evening, Ginny Hewitt, Library Director. I just wanted to mention a couple things, and the first is that the town clerk recently notified employees and committee chairs that it's time for us to complete the annual conflict of interest training required by the state. The training must be completed online, but not all employees or committee members have the skills or access to do this, or they may prefer to do it in a setting where assistance is available if they run into any problems. So I'm just here to let employees and committee members know, if that's the case, help is available at Brooks Free Library during any open hours, just Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have the computers and laptops, but more importantly, our staff members are trained and experienced in helping people use technology, so we'd be happy to help them get to the site where they need to go and to navigate through the process. We're asking people to come to the reference desk and tell the librarian why you're here, because otherwise our public computers have time sessions, and we don't want the time to run out on them, or we don't want them to feel time pressure. So the other reason why I'm here tonight is I wanted to provide you with some feedback on the professionalism of the Harwich Police Department. Recently, an incident occurred at the library that required the police to respond. That's not unheard of, and we've always received fast professional response whenever we call for assistance. But in this case, I want to talk about what the officers didn't do. One afternoon last week, a patron from a residential facility became aggressive and combative with the counselor who was with the group and making violent threats. So after failing to calm the client down, the counselor put him in a hold on the floor and called his agency for assistance. He was excellent, by the way, and which I was also really happy to see, spoke calmly to the client throughout the whole ordeal. He was really good. Then the police officers arrived. First, Officer Jessica Ferreira. She left shortly after once Officer Mark Holmes and Colin Thompson arrived. So other members from the facility came and took over from the first counselor, and they worked to calm the client down and obtain compliance so they could safely leave. It took about an hour and a half for the situation to be resolved. For most of this time, the client was being restrained on the floor by one or more counselors while periodically yelling these violent threats. So our officers were extremely professional. It was reassuring to see what they did not do. They didn't come charging in, trying to quell a disturbance or taking actions that escalate the situation. They assessed what was happening. They took positions on either side of the incident to ensure that if the counselors lost control, the client wouldn't get past them and no one else would be in danger. The person would be in that confined area. And then they waited, and they allowed the professional mental health workers to manage the situation while they stood back and stood by in case they were needed. Back in the day, that might not have happened. They might have jumped into action and asked questions later. even today, when you see officers come into a location, you're expecting to see something happen, and it didn't. And that was very impressive. There was a lot of restraint and patience. And so I spoke to the officers during and after the incident and told them we appreciated their calm approach. They told me that's what they're trained to do, to not place their hands on anyone except as a last resort and not to do anything to escalate the situation. Since the facility staff members were here, they allowed them to handle the situation and stayed on standby. So I know that having 2 officers for an extended period of time at one scene occupied a significant portion of patrol shift strength, but they made no effort to pressure the counselors to move things along. They let the experts in that field do their jobs, and in doing that, I think they demonstrated great insight into that field themselves. So I personally want to thank Officer Holmes and Thomas. They told me that all of their colleagues would have responded in the same way. For me, for my staff, and for all the patrons who witnessed the incident, it was very reassuring to see how they handled things. I also, in addition to thanking them personally, I want to compliment the Harwich Police Department. I think their actions reflect the excellent training received by officers, as well as the policies, procedures, and the organizational culture of the department. I thought that, you hear negative things in the press all the time, and a situation like this can easily escalate, and someone gets hurt, or something unfortunate happens. And I think that them knowing how to handle situations like this is just so important, and I wanted you to know.
Thank you, Ginny, and
Sure they
thank you
were.
for bringing that to our attention, because I think, as you say, we don't always hear the other good things going on, and we have an incredible police force
You
we're
know, it
lucky to
sounded-
have.
I'm in the middle of writing a letter of appreciation to the police chief, but it's kind of hard to say it in writing. Thank you for coming and not doing anything. Because they didn't not do anything. They applied their knowledge and
Right.
expertise.
No, they handled
but
it well. No.
Doesn't sound so good in writing.
Well, thank you, and thank you for letting us know. Appreciate that.
Good evening, everybody. Patrick Otten, East Harwich. 2 comments. The first is, I have 3 citizen petitions, 2 for the Harwich Home Rule on the application of fertilizers and pesticides, a 3rd bylaw on the preservation of trees. So I'll be asking for your help to support all 3 of those petitions when they come up on town meeting on May 6th. And then a comment on the tourist destination of Harwich. I'll read it because I won't screw it up. A tourist destination, a designation for Harwich, $3 million will be distributed. 60% goes to sales, marketing, destination development. 25% goes to workforce and business development, and 15% goes to admin costs. Not 1 cent for the preservation of the ecology of Harwich, the single reason why tourists come to Harwich. Okay, answer these questions. Why do tourists come to Harwich? Shopping and restaurants? Do tourists come to Harwich for unswimmable cyanobacteria ponds, contaminated shellfish, polluted seashores where 80% of all embayments are in decline? No, tourists come to Harwich. In fact, all residents of Harwich are here for the seashore, the ponds, and the woodlands. So what are the priorities? Is Harwich going to contract with Disney and Coney Island to sell tickets to come to Harwich? Is this just another way to exploit Harwich and not preserve Harwich? Why does a tourist designation district, whom does a tourist designation district benefit? Businesses, residents, nature? Do 12,000 residents need to lose what is precious to accommodate more tourists? When will there be respect and representation of the residents and nature of Harwich instead of businesses? You know, when nature is gone, what are you going to do? There's that old song by Joni, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. So I hope you pay attention to the other side of the story when we're talking development. So
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Patrick.
your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment and announcement? Yeah, Joe?
The Cape Cod Commission has released an announcement on an upcoming public meeting. Cape Cod Commission has been working with all the towns on Cape Cod on the issue of low-lying roads. Harwich is one of 5 communities that they're working with presently. So they are inviting the public to a meeting on Wednesday, February 7th this year at 4 p.m. It is a remote meeting only. It is workshop number 2 of the low-lying roads. Learn about possible solutions for the 2 identified low-lying road segments in Harwich, North Road and Bay Road at Route 28. Discuss potential traditional, green, and hybrid solutions for each identified road segment, including associated cost estimates, and ask any questions about the presented solutions or about the project in general. Again, this is a remote meeting taking place on Wednesday, September 7th. We'll have the flyer on the town's website. For any questions, you can contact our DPW Director, Link Hooper, at lhooper@harwich-ma.gov.
Thank you, Joe. Hearing nobody else for public comment and announcement, we'll move on to our joint meeting with with our board and the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. Larry, where are you? Oh, there. Do you want to call your group up?
Welcome back.
You want to switch?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so.
His wife's watching.
I'll try to be polite.
Thank you. As was I.
Larry, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for inviting us for an update of the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. I have some dot points I try to keep on track.
Pull the mic a little closer.
So is Jamie yelling at me already, or?
No, past colleague of yours.
I would first, as I have some dot points I want to go through to bring you up to date, and of course, this is discussion, so ask us questions. I have with me Bob Spencer, Brendan Lowney, and Claudia Williams I don't see. She's the other member of our trust. Julie's newly appointed last week, so thank you very much, Julie, for stepping up and
Yeah,
joining
looking forward
the
to it.
trust committee. We do, I'm really very proud, we have an audience member, Laura Schilfield is here. I'll bring her up later. She's been helping us move forward. We have an active committee that's been, we've been trying to focus and move this ahead as rapid as we can. I know I get yelled at occasionally for not moving fast enough. And as every good committees, we don't agree on everything, but we do agree on doing whatever we can to get this thing going. We do have, I know standard question always is, and I want to respect it. We've been very good, I think, at posting our agendas and our minutes. They're up to date. And in addition, we've been very transparent. Anything that comes before us, whether it's a draft RFP, any document we get from the commission, we've always posted that almost within a day or two on our website, so that it's out there. And that's a little scary, as you know. Draft RFPs can get really in-depth discussion, and people forget that they're draft.
Right.
But we felt it was important to get, we want to be, any discussion want to happen as soon as we can rather than later. What I'd like to do then is just step through some of the things we've been doing. One is, with the help of Jen Goldston, we did finalize a housing strategic plan, which we approved on December 11th. That's on our web. We're treating that as a working document. Bob has suggested, and we'll follow up to have that as a standing agenda item so we can discuss where we're going each meeting. We will, I think, as soon as our next meeting, which is February 13th at 5 o'clock, have a joint meeting with the Housing Production Plan to have our input into that as they continue their work, their standalone work, and also as part of the local comprehensive plan that you know about. So we're happy with that. That was a question that seemed to continue forever about where's our strategic plan, and it's not perfect because it'll never be perfect. We just need to always update it. Our next item I'd like to just, and please, you guys are looking at me, but please feel free to ask any of us questions. The one we're most excited about right now is we did approve at our last minutes funding for 3 affordable housing apartments. The the second story of the Bank Street Fire Station that the Harwich Fire Association is moving forward with their sweat equity and funding from CPC. We voted a total of $150,000 per apartment to finish the apartment side of that. That was their initial request. Based on I know my town experience as well as others, I asked them to add additional funds as a contingency fund. I think we've always done that in building, and so their request came in for $476,000, which we voted to approve. We also then voted to fund that half of that immediately so they can keep going, and then release the rest of those funds based on where they are in their schedule completion of the apartments. But that's a great activity in terms of kind of silly jargon in my mind. That's short money. We get 3 affordable apartments for $450,000. It also, I think we feel good about it because, let me speak for myself right now. I've always been concerned that we have a culture of it's affordable housing or open space, one or the other. And we desperately need to move away from that idiom and so that we realize we can work together. With Michael Locke and Bob Spencer, we did have a discussion with Mr. Wilbur on the joint open space and housing development they had done that went well. And this, in fact, is a great example of that in Harwich, because the Harwich Fire Association has been working with the Harwich Conservation Trust. We walked that muddy trail that they're working on, but in response to the building itself, they're helping to fund in the parking lot. Harwich Associated is also asking for CPC funds to finish that project. The ideal goal is that with our initial funding, they'll keep that project going. They've requested CPC funds if that were to take place, and that funding will come in, as you know, in July. And they can complete that with the hope that those apartments will be available at this fall of this year. And we have, it's posted on our website. Our motion was about a book length that Brendan put together, but it very closely documented that it had to be affordable housing, it had to be in, what do you call it, the deed restricted for 99 years, because that had been, so we were careful to follow all of the affordable housing guidelines. Our next project we're working on, and this I'd like to thank again Lori Schofield from Mass Housing Partnership. And if you have any really detailed questions, I ask you to pick on Laura as we go forward. But we've been looking and redrafting with Laura's help a draft request for a proposal for this work. And I get confused on this. In the old days, we called this the Marsan property, just for those who forgot where it is. But it's now called 456 Queen Anne Road. We've been asked not to refer to that as the Marsan property, so this will be the last time I want to honor that wish, and so I won't say that again. We have voted in our committee to approve the draft RFP as it were, as it was presented to us and as we discussed it. However, we will vote on that again, discuss that again at our next meeting, because what Laura and her team have been doing, in addition to helping us, is developing a couple conceptual site plans so that we can discuss that. And our hope is that we can discuss that and approve it and give it to Joe and Megan, our procurement officers, to get on the street as quickly as we can. So that the idea is we can get it out. We've tried to make it broad enough so that developers can give us their best shot of what they think will work there. We didn't want to try to prejudge what was there. What Laura has told us is that based on primarily the wastewater issues, we could probably have up to 90 bedrooms there with a range of 3 and 2 and 1 bedroom units. There are questions we need to answer. One is egress, whether it'd be better to come off to Queen Anne Road or Pleasant Street. 134, as you know, or 124, excuse me, is a state road, so it may be easier to come off on our local road in Queen Anne, but that would be a discussion we have. I know if I don't say this, Bob will interrupt and hammer me. But an issue we are going to request from the Cape Cod Commission, we had them in at a meet with us our last meeting, and we said they were excellent. They said they would help us wherever they could. One item we need to help as soon as we can is a traffic study. Partly because, as you know from the public, that seems to be the number one issue that always comes up. So we'd like to get that going even before we move on the RFP. We may ask your support on that. It's not clear to me on the Cape Cod Commission side, and they didn't give a direct answer except they would help, is can they do it now based on very preliminary information, or do they prefer to wait until we're further down the road?
Mm-hmm.
I think our committee's judgment is we'd like to get it sooner rather than later to get that discussion going. Our next action after our February 13th meeting will be then to first put all this on the website again, but then schedule as many meetings as we can. So I guess as you know, we do have time, but we need the public discussion. My feeling has been in the past, and we've postponed some of this public discussion because I haven't had a warm feeling about public housing discussions based on what the vision is. I think it's much better to have a public discussion when there's some concepts to look at and get reaction to that. And so that's where we're going. We do have a request in to the Conservation CPC for $500,000 again this year, so we continue to bag funds going forward. The next item I have on my dot list I want to mention to you is thank you, Joe and Kathleen Varick. We got Friday, late Friday, a complete financial report on the housing trust funds for, and I know I sent you a copy of that, Julie, probably because you're on the committee now, but yeah. And Joe has it, but be sure I want to be sure that's in your meeting minutes.
Yeah.
Where we are now is we have $1.7 million in the housing trust. That was as of Friday. We of course committed $476,000 of that to the apartments on the old fire station. So we have a balance of about $1.2 million in our trust funds. The question that we've asked as well is, what about the stabilization funds? As you know, 2 years ago, we voted in town meeting to commit 25% of the Airbnb funds to housing, another 25%, of course, to wastewater, and the remaining to the general fund. But what that's given us right now is we have about $1.5 million in our stabilization funds, which is that's mostly room tax. There is a $400,000 funding that was passed in the annual town meeting last year to put in the housing, and then there's some interest going into that. My understanding, talking to Joe, is that the stabilization funding was voted on 2 years ago. Is that right? Last year,
21.
21.
Yep.
The process is, even though that sits there, that has to go to town meeting as a vote to transfer that money out of the stabilization fund into the trust. So I'm obviously hoping that that will be one of your warrant articles this spring, to sure we transfer those funds into the trust. But that gives us a good start. In terms of the future, we as a committee have been very vocal about our support for the Pine Oaks project going forward. I'm hoping that, I'm not sure what we can do with that, but we certainly want to add our support to that any way we can, because obviously that's a lot of housing that would help us all out. We do have various properties that have been listed in previous documents that we want to look at in the future. One of the things, even though I think Laura Selfeld has done one look around those and give us some information, we would like to go out and appraise at least a couple of those to get more detailed information. And partly that's because if you look at these properties, when we have some difference of opinion on these. Some of these you can rule out maybe because there's a vernal pool there. And I push back a little bit on that because there's a vernal pool, that doesn't necessarily move the whole property out. You know, and that area can help us in the zoning do more in. That's one side. The other side is that maybe take so much out that no one's interested in affordable housing. You can put one big house there. So we need more details. But that's an area where we've had some discussion, probably some disagreement, but I maintain, as you know, that committees aren't any good if you agree on everything. Why have them? But that will be, so we'll be asking to go out with a request, and we can support that ourselves in the funding so we can move ahead. Just as a side comment, as you know, I have no pride. I have no problem stealing from other towns. And at a meeting a few weeks ago with the lower housing committee, I forget which one now, seems like we have a lot of them, I learned that Chatham has put out an RFP of a request of anyone who may be interested in selling property to the housing trust for renovation or for land. And so I'll bring that, Joe, very quickly. I'm not sure, it went out and it ends, I think, in a week or so. I don't know how successful it's been, but it does no harm to ask if people are sitting on property that they might want to take advantage of deals with the town. You know, some of those you can, from a selling perspective, you can get some interesting tax credits and so on if it goes, work it out. So I do want to pursue that. And I think I've gone through my dot points. I'd ask Bob and Brendan if you have, Bob?
I have a couple of things I'd like to say, and it's to you, to the community. And the first is a word of thanks. The residents of Harwich had a vision, and they had a bold vision to establish an affordable housing trust. And I am grateful, as a new resident, relatively new resident in Harwich, I'm grateful for that vision, for that courage, for that boldness. And that's a message to every resident in this town. It's for the greater good. And the same message, I have to say, not only did it get established, but it gets generously funded. I would never say it's too much funding, but it's generous. And you keep us in a position of being able to do things like the Hartford Fire Association. that was an easy thing for us to do, to have that kind of partnership. And so to the residents of this town, thank you. You're generous and you're bold. And I personally appreciate that. I also appreciate people that have been at this for quite a time. Starting with Larry Brophy, the late Larry Brophy. Larry, as I understand it, gave his heart and soul to this effort. Judith Underwood, Don Howell, Joe Powers, and Brendan Lowney all energized this Affordable Housing Trust. And these are just citizens, just average citizens, stepping up, just like yourselves, stepping up and doing good. I take pride in my town. You've adopted me and given me a chance to give back, and that means a lot to me. Mary Anderson, Larry Ballantyne, Claudia Williams, Brendan Lowney, boy, it's been a pleasure to work with this crew. You guys are great. It was, Mary's term was short, but that was also important. I want to go back to the traffic thing for just a minute. It's my understanding that the Cape Cod Commission requires a request from the town administrator to activate or bring in its traffic services. I would hope that the Select Board would take a vote to draft that letter in partnership with the town administrator, because we're sitting on the edge of over 300 units of affordable housing. That almost gets us to 10% of what we need. But we've got to address the issues that are at hand. Traffic is an issue, and we have to look at creative solutions to mitigation of that as an issue, and maybe developing the infrastructure to support the affordable housing. I would hope that the board would take that kind of a leadership step, not to impose anything, but to bring in some help that might be exactly what we need. So, with that, I'll close. Thank you for the opportunity that I've been given.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be on the committee.
Well said, Bob. Thank you.
Slide the mic over, Larry.
Well said, thank you. When I first started this, on the trust, it was always talked about we are 20 years behind. I think that has changed. I think we're closer than we think we are, and adding more units. We started off with 3, very recently, but we're leading that charge to get hopefully 90 bedrooms soon, and see what else comes about. But I think we're well on our way. We got the right team, and we thank you for the support. Without the Select Board, it wouldn't happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brendan. I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Michael, you have any questions?
Really just a thank you. Great work. You guys made a ton of progress in a year. I appreciate the Cape Cod Commission and the ask. I think that's a very simple ask. And I like that the commission's going to come in and do it. On the other project that you all referenced, on the opposite end of Queen Anne Road, it was done by a private party, and I completely disagree with their findings. But I think it's more important that we don't create another emergency by solving an emergency. So we all know that we have a housing problem. But if you talk about 288 units on one end of Queen Anne Road, and then just around the corner, 90 bedrooms, and then we can only imagine what's going to happen on the actual Marceline property that still exists, which is a big commercial lot. So getting some real data to make real decisions and not creating another emergency is super important to me. I too think we should start looking at maybe asking CPC for more funds out of that housing bucket that they have, because this is working. We're proving that it's actually working. It's taken a while to get us here, but a reoccurring article every year at town meeting for more money, certainly something that I would support, instead of having competing projects with that money. I would assume that, I would just assume all of the money went into the housing trust, and as long as it continues to work. Julie, I would ask that you share the financial report that was given with the board.
Yeah, I will.
That can get emailed to the board. I'd appreciate it. And I think that's it. And thank you. Thank you all very much. It was a great report, and it's nice to have a positive topic in front of us with thankful people.
Thank you, Michael. Jeff?
Yeah, and thank you all for being here and all the work you've done. I echo everything Michael has said. I will add, I'm really a big fan of the strategy of finding out the barriers that are going to come up and getting ahead of those. So I really commend you for looking forward, identifying what obstacles you're going to be confronted with, and then public outreach and public meetings, and I think that's going to be a huge, huge part of this. And lastly, I'm just thrilled with the progress. You know, I drive by that Harwich Fire Station, the old fire station, every day. I don't know how many times a day I drive by it. It breaks my heart to see nothing going on. And now the doors have come on, looks fantastic, and I think your involvement and your commitment to the project is moving it forward. So the progress is there, and as I always say, you can't fake results. So here we go. Thank you.
Thank you, too. I can't say enough about how much you've accomplished. I look forward to joining you. I can save some of my questions till the meeting next week, next month. But I'm just for the public's sake in general, in terms of the RFP process, when do you anticipate trying to go out with that? And also, you mentioned the conceptualized site plans, which sounds like a great idea, too. So what's the timeline on that?
Well, maybe Laura can give us because we're...
Good evening. I'm Laura Schufelt. I'm the Director of Community Assistance at Massachusetts Housing Partnership, and I'm a native Cape Codder. So I work in Boston, but my heart's here, and my home is here. So for the RFP process, we're still working through a couple of edits, probably. The conceptual site plans, and those probably will be done by the next meeting. We should have them. I will say that the conceptual site plans are one or two options that a developer may choose. They don't have to choose that, but it's a way to express what the board the trust is looking for, but also to look at where the most appropriate access is, and to give some direction around traffic flow within the site and externally.
Okay.
So that's, and to release the request for proposals, the best timing for developers is after the funding round is over. The state has an annual funding round for projects, and I think the last date is the first week of February, when they have to have it. It's first or second week of February. And so usually they need a little breather after that, so we usually try and get them out in March,
Okay.
April.
And would and Larry, this may be more a question for you and your board, but will the select board have a chance to review that RFP before it goes out? Just curious.
I don't see why not, because what we're going to do, what my intent is, I don't want to have, always have a low bar in life, but my intent right now is that we don't hang it up. We're not the limiting factor in getting this RFP out. And so I want to do, is with Laura's help, is when we get the draft RFP, we'll make that public. There's no reason not to. And we'll send you a copy so you can have a look at that.
Yeah.
I would like us, hopefully we can have a good discussion at our next meeting. We can approve that RFP as it is and give it to Joe, as I said, Joe and Megan. I'm hoping that it hits the street. I'm hoping it hits the street by the end of February, so we're out there plenty of time for developers to look at it. I understand the funding rounds, but I want to give developers a chance to respond to it.
Okay.
So our goal is what it is.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say that the draft RFPs can be public, but when we get to a final RFP, it has to go through the central register, and folks have to ask to get it. So that isn't publicly, it's public, it just, developers have to ask for it, so they
right.
can get amendments. So
Right.
there's a process, procurement process that has to go through.
But we'll put out notifications that that is going.
And a link to it, how they can get it.
Yeah.
That's a great clarification, because we're looking at, if I may, parallel communication here. One is the formal process getting the developers to look at. The second avenue is be sure we get it out to you and actually the public. So we start the dialogue.
Right.
And so I don't think those are, I think it's consistent doing both.
Oh, great, thank you. And in terms of the appraisals that you spoke about on the other properties, and I know you said that that would be self-funded anyway, but your timeline on that, I mean, just because appraisals, like, we got an appraisal on a couple things, it took us a while to get them. Remember, we went out for an appraisal?
And we're working on appraisals now for Phase 3, and it's taken over 3
Yeah,
months.
it's taken a while.
We're still working on our agenda for the next meeting. I initially thought we'd talk about then, and then I want to focus on the RFP, and I want to focus on the housing production plan. So I've gone back and forth. I'll probably add it back in, because that should be like a 5-minute discussion after the appraisals, so
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that they're taking a while, so if you had
Yeah.
some sort of timeline in your mind, you know.
We'll try to start it soon, because,
Okay,
I mean, the old saying is, nothing, I mean, you got to start somewhere.
right,
So
right.
we'll get it out there.
Okay, and I'm hoping that you'll stick around. We're gonna have a discussion on the Housing Committee charge as well, that, you know, we spoke about too, so I think it would be helpful to have input.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Joe, you have anything? Did you?
No, just to say thank you. Great work and critical work, and a great team doing it.
Thank you.
Well, and as my cohort said, we thank you and everyone for all the support we've been given.
Thanks. Thanks again, guys.
Yep.
And,
Note you adjourned.
yeah, oh, yeah, right. So next on our agenda is done. I'll just go to this because this is the discussion on the Harwich Housing Committee charge. Votes may be taken. And I had circulated this draft to board members because as we talked about it, and I think members of the Housing Committee are here. So if you want, yeah, sure. Anyone else from your committee here?
Art's here. I don't know if he wants to participate or just sit in the back and make faces at me.
So, I just wanted to get this out there because, as you know, and Elizabeth and other members of Art and others, you know, I know that you've been anxious to move forward on this, but,
Right.
no, it's not a joint meeting, but it's okay for them to
No,
just.
because
Yeah,
we're-
no,
we were told as long as there's 2 of us, we're not a quorum.
right, and I'm just having you sit there in terms of the conversation that I want to have with the board, so just sharing that.
I just wanted to let you know that the paragraph that I just handed out to you was just because I used to be an editor, and the first paragraph just irked me a smidge. So that's why I put out the new purpose paragraph.
Yeah, so we can blend.
To clear it up.
I think the main thing here is to, and again, I was a liaison to the Housing Committee, I think when I first came on the board. So I know that, you know, there's been all this desire to try to do something, but it's been difficult. And so I think that now where we've got a trust, as we've just heard, a trust working very productively and trying to look forward on how we change that housing committee charge and how you can more effectively work in tandem with the trust. But I'm going to go back, and I just asked you to sit here in the sense of feedback. But I'd also like to just go to my board members to say, I know you haven't had a ton of time to review this, but what your opinions are, or any kind of revisions that you'd like to see. Michael did bring up a good point on spelling out really the housing trust each time. It's just a little less chaotic in the document. But I'll go to you, Jeff, if you have any comments.
Yeah, I have two right off the bat, and then I'll listen a little bit. Just some clarification on the last, well, the last line under purpose. The committee will also recommend housing to the select board that is affordable for individuals and families who do not meet current affordability income requirements to encourage public and private support. Just a little clarity on that, if I could.
Should be, one of the things I wanted to change, were we discussing it, was change affordable to attainable.
Okay.
Because, I mean, affordable is all over this, which is fine. But I think the housing committee should also work on workforce housing, because the trust is doing affordable. So
So that's
the
a,
town needs
my point.
workforce work, and so under that, I think if the changing the word to attainable for
Yeah.
Well,
people
I think-
instead of affordable, you know, for the people who can't afford it, affordable housing for people who can.
okay, well, I think I'm just going to
afford it,
direct
make
you
it attainable.
to the last, under scope and procedure, and this is where, you know, there may be more revisions needed, but under the last paragraph, the committee will also recommend housing to the select board that is affordable for individuals and families who do not meet current affordable income requirements to encourage public and private support. So I think
That should be attainable.
so,
The first affordable, and that's, I'm trying to find it here.
yeah, so,
For the people who can't afford it, it should just be,
I think,
find it, but
Well,
attainable.
I'm just going to.
You make it attainable, not affordable, because there's different terms in housing.
I think that we might have to move to say something like more along the lines of workforce housing, something that people understand what the reference is. And even on that, you know, we've talked about this, and I'm not part of the trust yet until next month when I'm at their meeting. But I also think it's important, and other towns have done this, is to come up with a bylaw definition of workforce. Eastham has done it, and I think that that could serve us well, so that we can at least point to something and have a definition when we say workforce, because we currently don't have that. So, again, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and second part of my question is, does it need to be in both locations? Because they,
No, and that's what I'm saying.
That's what
So
you're
this was
saying.
my draft, and it's
Gotcha.
really sort of mentioned,
Sure.
but not as clearly in that first purpose.
and then,
Again, later.
sure, and this might be a little nitpicky, but in keeping with all the other charges that we've looked at and reviewed, the housing advocate shall be under the supervision of the town administrator. Does that need to be in this document? And I don't have I'm just bringing it up to have a discussion about it.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not,
good point.
I just don't see that falling in under purpose. It might fit better somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe we can, I don't know, Joe, do you have any feedback on that? I just want it to be clear, right?
So I do, and my inclination and preference would be to remove any reference to the housing advocate.
Okay, so we can,
This is not a charter-based committee.
That's right.
Where charter-based committees have that reference.
That's right.
okay.
And I'm most concerned about the current reference under the proposed conduct.
Oh, yeah, okay, do you want to get rid of that, strike that? Okay, so we'll strike that, yeah.
And then,
That would do nothing, if I may, that would do nothing to have the interaction between all those groups.
Right.
With the housing advocate, though.
Right. And I guess that's just more of an educational piece that, in terms of the committee understanding the process.
understood. And lastly, thank you for indulging, under scope and procedure, where, second paragraph, when directed by the select board, so forth and so on. I obviously think it's important for the Select Board to give direction and to work collaboratively with the committee. But unlike another committee that we have dealt with in the past, I just want to make sure that this is not stating in any way that the only way your committee could create an agenda, hold public meetings, is by direction of the Select Board. And that's how I read it. And I don't want to, I don't want to confuse what has happened with one committee with all the other committees. So,
No, and I think the intention here is to really just say, you know, they have their charge. But there may be times where the trust is working on something, you know, and we're saying, well, here's a place that we could go to the housing committee to say, hey, we have this idea, or get us some information, and we would direct that through the housing committee. But we can clarify that a little bit better, I would say, because we don't want to have, I agree with you, we don't want to
All
look
we
like
went
we're,
through.
right. We don't want to appear as if we're telling them that they have to wait for
absolutely not.
us. So we can clean that up.
No restrictions, so to speak.
Right.
And I think the more people working in the same direction for this cause is something, you know, should come straight down from the Select Board all the way through all committees. So
Yep.
that's it for me. I think the rest of it is spot on. But I'm going to wait to hear what Mr. McCaskill has to say.
Michael?
I don't have much. The acronyms, you nailed a couple of them. I don't really read that the same, and I think we're giving them scope and procedure. So we're giving them a list of tasks, and I think we can add to it anytime we want. You know, one thing that is important is, and it has happened in the past, is people go off on wild goose chases and get outside of the focus.
Right.
Which in a lot of cases is why we're trying to clean up the scope or
Right.
the charge of the committee. So I think it reads well. I would agree the word attainable or workforce. I think attainable right now is more defined than workforce, since workforce is not defined. Something that we could revisit later.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like there's a lot of edits. I agree with Joe, and that was one of my comments, is I think the housing advocate should be removed from the entire document.
Yeah.
And that is an employee, and clearly, we're gonna work towards giving the housing advocate more to do and more to do and more to do, but through the town administrator.
Oh,
really-
okay.
really
Because
through-
I just wanted to make sure that, you know, Brianna or whoever the advocate is knew they could come to us. But if you want to do it through Joe to us, that's fine.
Yeah, and I
just-
think,
I feel like we need to help them as much as possible.
well, and I personally don't think it's gonna be, I think Brianna's probably, or the housing advocate's probably gonna love to go to the meetings and see some progress, just like we all saw some progress tonight. But it should be by direction of the town administrator.
Yeah, sure.
So I would only ask, since there's minor edits, how do we want to handle this? Because it's important to me, and I know it's important to others, to get this thing voted and then get the housing committee back going. And we have new members that we've held off on.
Yeah.
And they're on the agenda tonight, but I'm reluctant to vote the new members without an actual charge. I said reluctant.
Well,
Don't come out of the seat yet.
maybe what we can do is, and again, I look to you two to confirm, but I can certainly change affordable to attainable as discussed. We'll spell out the HAHT every place else. I'll clean up, well, I think what I'll do is leave that last paragraph as I've given it to you, and I'll remove out of the first under purpose, where it says the committee will also recommend housing to the select board that's affordable for blah, blah, blah. We'll take that out and I'll put it at the end where it is currently under scope and procedure.
So you're saying purpose will end at environment?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, and then we'll include the other language under scope and procedure, and I'll change that to attainable. Get rid of under conduct, just strike that under conduct. Strike the housing advocate shall be under the supervision of the town administrator under purpose on the first page. And then I would go back to the conversation we just had about when directed by the select board. I mean, I think we can, maybe it's on occasion, the select board may direct or something like that to just make it clear that it's not just the select board telling them.
And as long as, Madam Chair, it's on record from me that we are not restricting this committee
Right.
whatsoever. And then quickly, the last thing I would add is under conduct, such concerns shall be relayed exclusively to the select board by way of the liaison.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna, yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah, that's fine, and
Because
so
that's
right
been
here,
consistent with all the other charges we've
Yeah.
been,
oh, I see, sorry, yeah, and you know what, we can, yeah, that's fine. I'll keep that section up until that point, and then just,
Yes,
yeah, get
correct.
rid of this part,
and then add liaison in there as the channel.
yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And if you want the open procedure, second paragraph, you could just start it with, the select board and/or the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust may direct.
Right,
That works. Thank you, Madam Editor.
I'm so fussy.
Thank you, Madam
I
Editor.
can do an hour on the Oxford comma.
okay, Larry?
Larry Ballantyne, East Harwich. Again. I know, Julie, I sent you an edit on the, asked the comment be put in that refer not to attainable nor workforce housing, but those that weren't applicable for affordable housing. I prefer that language because neither workforce nor attainable is defined. I think if we come back and define that, that's good, and, you know, it's well and good. But in the meantime, I think for the housing committee to keep that as broad as possible.
Yeah,
That way our focus on affordable housing. The housing committee's focus on everything else, because we know we need, affordable housing only gets us so far. It's a critical need that we provide housing for others, but I prefer that language.
so let me just ask you this, if it were to read, the committee will also recommend housing to the select board for individuals and families who do not meet current affordability income requirements to encourage public and private support.
Right.
So we'll
I
just
like
get
that.
rid of.
I like
yeah.
that better than the.
Okay, it's
trying
more
to
general, I
define-
think it's better, yeah,
Right.
okay. That's good.
I also very much appreciate the housing committee and y'all looking at this, because our goal is to work together.
Right,
We have different missions, but they all come together. We're all looking for more housing, and the more that we can support each other and get that committee, and so that they're helping to publicize it. We're talking about public meetings. We're doing all that together with them, taking our pieces we can.
right.
So I appreciate you looking at it.
Thank you, Larry. So I think that if we make these revisions, we could move forward, and I'm happy to make them quickly, so that we could then move forward with voting a charge, so that we could then also move forward with appointing the committee members.
So we try to make a motion removing certain things
Yeah.
that we did?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do as amended, and we can put a clean copy in next week's packet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. And then I'll just put that, I'll circulate that to all of you.
Fantastic. I move that we approve the Harwich Housing Committee charge as amended and as presented tonight.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Brendan stood up.
Oh,
I'm not sure if
Brendan,
he
I
wanted
didn't
to
see
I
you.
just want to clarify the attainable, so the Cape Cod Commission came to us about the regional housing strategy,
Okay.
and attainable came up, and I heard that word in their forums over the last year or so. And I asked the question, are you mixing it, or is it, affordable housing is 80% or less, and 80 to 120 is workforce, and 120 to 200 is attainable? They're using attainable as all-encompassing. It
Oh.
covers everything.
Yeah,
When you're dealing with affordable, there's restrictions on that.
right.
Workforce housing, there's restrictions on that as well.
Mm.
Even if CPC can give 100% AMI.
Mhm.
So they're trying to use the word attainable, and I asked that question, they were very clear on it.
Mhm.
And it is a little confusing when you read through their strategy, they're mixing the word around a little bit,
Right.
because it's very new. But it's really to just give more all-encompassing, whether you're making, what's 30% AMI or 220% AMI. It's for everyone, it's all-inclusive, that term. So, but there is still the term of affordable housing.
Right.
Potentially workforce housing.
Yeah,
And
because
something else.
capital A,
Yeah,
affordable
but I
is
think the way
80%.
we've amended this has made it more
Perfect,
general,
yeah,
and
that
so
was
I
what
think
they were
it's better to leave it that way, so. Okay, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may make a comment, I want to thank you for
including the word attainable. Because
No, I'm not, we're removing it.
They're not, they're taking it
We're
out.
taking it out to be
No,
more
you-
general.
but we're trying to get away from the word affordable.
Right.
Yes.
Even Habitat, and I'm advocate of Habitat, is getting pushback from the, heretofore, they always put the logo on the houses. And now recently have had some pushback from applicants. They didn't want the stigma,
Oh,
you know, so attainable is a softer word.
Thank you.
And then Art Bowden can now go out and buy a house because it's attainable.
that's good.
Thank
Thank
very
you, Art.
much. Because, we've been sitting, kind of treading water for quite a while, and we want to get started.
Thanks for your patience.
We're good. Don't cut us.
All right, now we're gonna look at our bylaw charter review committee charge.
Yes.
And just pulling mine out,
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
And, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, I was just going to state that this was given to me by the Bylaw Charter Review Committee maybe about a week and a half ago, and I'm happy that we're already moving on it and it's here for us to take a look at. So I just wanted that to be out there.
Great, thank you. Again, I think we're all trying to move everything along that we can, and so any specific comments from board members? I'll also open it up to ask if there's any other feedback.
I like when Jeff starts.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to start?
Sure. Michael, start.
So the first comment is thank you. I know we have at least one member here tonight, 2 members here tonight, 3 members here tonight. Thank you for the work that you put into it. I would say the same thing that I said in the last charge. We have to remove the acronyms. We should be spelling it out. You can't use acronyms in agendas, so I think we should stay consistent with that.
Which acronym?
So if we're using BCRC,
As stated in the first line.
Yep.
It's defined.
and then under conduct, everywhere where it is in the document
You want that spelled out.
should be spelled out.
Okay.
That's one on number, and Linda, you might want to stay up there, scope and responsibilities. It says, Select Board shall submit all such articles to the Bylaw Charter Review Committee not later than 5 days after the deadline for submission of articles.
Yeah, that's.
Where did that
And,
5 days come from? The current charter says 14.
Where are you?
So,
Oh, got it,
scope
yes.
and responsibilities. So that says 5 days. If we go back to 716.2 in the charter,
We can change
it
that to
says
14. That's
14 days.
fine.
Okay. And then shall submit a report to town meeting concerning any proposed amendments and/or revisions, including spelled out BCRC recommendations. Where does the report to town meeting come in to the current charter? You're supposed to give a report to the Board of Selectmen. You can make recommendations in another section, but there is no reporting mechanism in the current charter for town meeting. Where did that come from?
We are just stating that when it comes time for town meeting, that if there's a change suggested for a charter revision, any charter changes, or bylaw changes, that our committee will stand up and say that we have reviewed this and we think it's A, a good idea, or B, it's not a good idea. So it's a report to town meeting on an article for change.
So the number 1 under scope is regularly review the Harwich Charter and Harwich bylaws, Part 1, administration of the government. Submit proposed revisions to town meeting at least once every 5 years. So I think it's covered. I don't know why we're adding when you're supposed, the scope really should say that you're gonna give the report to the Board of Selectmen.
And we will, but again, we can, if you want to take that out, we can live with that, but we will probably still have an opinion at town meeting as a committee. In the same way that CPC does, the planning board does. If there's a planning board amendment or a bylaw that's being proposed, the planning board stands up and says, we have met, we had a public hearing, we did this, we did that, and we therefore are suggesting, or that town meeting should pass this bylaw change or new bylaw. In the same, so if you want to have some words, that's really the intent here, is to say we would be following what other committees do
And I would
already.
only argue that Finance Committee and CPC, it's required under
Yep.
our bylaws. So
Yep.
that's why they do it. So I'm not saying I'm against it. I just wanted to know where it came from and why.
That's why.
And this is if there is proposed changes, is what you're saying. If there's proposed changes, you'll stand up in front
Yes.
of town meeting and
Yes.
say, we're for it or against it because of why.
And that's why it says any proposed amendments and or revisions, including the committee recommendations.
But
Yeah.
just a question off of that question. Should it be really more direct in the sense of any proposed charter or bylaw amendments?
You can clarify that, but our
Just-
purpose is to review both the charter and the bylaws.
Right, I'm just, just because we're beating everything to death with them, I'm just thinking,
Go
let's just
for it. Okay,
charter
proposed
and
amendments
bylaw amendments.
to charter and or bylaws. Cool.
Just so it's clear.
No, I
Yep, no problem.
That's all I have.
just have one.
Jeff?
Back to, Select Board shall submit all articles to Bylaw Charter Review Committee no later than 5 days after the deadline for submission of articles. I'm sure that's somewhere in the charter,
That's why we just changed it to
It's
14.
right? But I'm wondering if that's a scope and responsibility of the Bylaw Charter Review Committee, or if that's a responsibility of the Select Board. If it's a responsibility of the Select Board to provide you with something 14 days out, I don't think it needs to be in their charge.
And the reason that we put it in here is that has not been happening in the past.
And
So
I understand
consequently,
that.
that's why we're doing this.
I understand, but I don't think the charge is the right place to have that language because it is not under your scope or responsibility.
Okay.
So as much as I agree with what you're saying and will hopefully rectify that issue, I don't think it belongs there.
Okay?
So I'd like to strike that if you
Okay,
could.
yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Strike those sentences, and we will watch the 14 days.
Lord knows I will take your word on it.
Okay, so remove that portion.
Huddle? You get the huddle?
And, yeah, well, hold on, Noreen, you have to speak, say your
Tell us
name
who
and.
you are.
Who are you?
Noreen Donahue, Review. But that is a clause in the charter portion.
Right.
I didn't understand you, Jeff, because it's right in a section under the charter.
In the charter, and that's exactly where it should live. But it doesn't need to be in the charge specific to your responsibility and your scope of the committee, Noreen.
all right.
But thank you for bringing that forward.
Right, we're not taking it out of the charter, we're taking it out of the
Absolutely not.
charge.
Out of the charge.
Right.
And that's just to attempt to remain consistent with all charges.
Right, no, good point.
Other than that,
I don't have any other comments other than the ones we just discussed. Anybody else have any other?
someone else.
Yep.
Oh, certainly, please.
Martha Donovan, East Harwich, member of the Capital Outlay Committee. As you probably know, I have been droning on for the last 2 years about this, but under Section 7.2, if we're going to make the changes to include financial information of the town, in my opinion, in order to get a full view of the town, you need to include debt in there. We need to start, I keep saying this, we need to start paying attention to our debt positions. While our debt today is not an issue, we're probably lower than many towns around Massachusetts, and we're in good shape. As we go through this sewering project, I think we have to be more concerned about that.
But
And
so,
Are you speaking about the bylaw charter review committee charge or their recommendations?
Their recommendation.
No, we're not there yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Had me confused.
Right.
but
Yeah.
I have some questions on that one, too.
No, and that's why
confused too.
I was rounding up on the charge so we could get to the next section. Is there any further?
No.
So how do you want to go about, do you want to go about?
Oh, yes, I have one more.
Yeah, oh, okay, go ahead.
I would like to just open up for discussion on the bottom, conduct. If said concerns are not addressed in a reasonable time frame, bylaw charter review committee shall notify the select board in writing. I don't feel that needs to be in there. However, I agree it's a procedure and a practice that should be occurring without exception, but I just don't feel it needs to be in the charge. My 2 cents.
And reasonable time frame. If we bring something to the liaison, and Jeff's been pretty good so far about,
Pretty good.
getting back to us and getting back to me. If he came back to us and said, we're going to be really busy over the next 6 weeks on la-di-da, can this wait till June, September? That's a reasonable response.
And I understand and agree with you 100%, Linda. I just don't think it belongs in the charge.
So you want just the last line to be struck,
I want the last line to be struck.
okay?
And I like the reason, I like the notify the select board liaison, as we talked about with the last charge, being a procedure in writing to address any concerns or issues that then shall be brought to the attention of the select board within a reasonable time frame. I'm not going to get hung up on the reasonable time frame. I can leave that in there if the last line would be struck. Hi, Noreen.
I would just add to that, if I may, Madam Chair. They can always write the Board of Selectmen.
Right,
Yeah, that's true.
And they can
At
always
any
stand-
time.
Stand at the microphone and.
right.
and-
It
and
doesn't
say
need
that
to be in there. I think it's a good point, yeah.
Linda, I don't know if you caught that, but I said you can always write the Board of Selectmen. That would be my only argument to why we don't need it in there. You don't need,
I'm good with that.
Yeah, okay. Noreen?
Well, I'm the one who added the sentence, so I'm not good with that. Only because, I mean.
You
it's
have to
easy
go closer to the microphone. Sorry.
Are we all happy now? But me. Linda said it was okay. I could come up here. You guys are okay. Everybody's okay. Okay. A year from now, we won't remember this conversation. What I didn't like about looking at the other charters, the templates, and I understand some situations were very different, is that you folks have kind of inserted the liaison into a little different role than it had for many years, which is fine. But by doing that, you cut us off. You cut the committees off. They could go to their liaisons. You wanted everything done through the liaison. But then what if you have a lousy liaison? I don't like it to be said, well, you can always do that. Everybody knows that because you've put this new thing in. You put the liaison as the final person. That's why I added that sentence.
But I think back to the point is that if for any reason you did have a lousy liaison, you can always email the board. And you can say.
But how do we know that? There were other charges. I realize they're different situations, but we're very clear that no, they couldn't go to the board.
I don't think that there's any charge that, there's a liaison, and we do that on purpose because we start tripping over each other if we're all starting to work on, if I don't know Jeff's working on something and I start working on something, then we're just wasting time, and then we're actually causing miscommunication and confusion. So everything should go through the liaison. But I think if you're in a situation where your committee is going to say me and I'm not being responsive, there's no reason you can't email the town administrator and blind copy the board or however way you want to do it and make it clear that you have a non-responsive liaison. There's no reason you couldn't do that.
Well, it's you guys who handle the committees, so I don't think the TA would be involved. But
Well, no, we work with the TA. We work with our liaisons, our meetings, et cetera. We go through the town administrator's office and staff. So there's no reason you couldn't. For example, if I don't show up to Larry's meeting and he, requested me to be there, and I'm not that I won't do that, Larry, and as a member of the trust now, but I'm just saying, any committee member, right? If you're non-responsive and you're not showing up to anything, there's no way that you're not going to get a response.
I'm not going to beat it to death. I mean, you guys say that we should know that anyway. I think we've had problems in town over the last few years over language that wasn't clear, and now I think we're ending another paragraph with language that's not stated what we can do, because that business about having to take it to your liaison, that's new. That was never that way before, that it was official that we went through the liaison. Not in charges. I looked at 23 of them. So,
Yeah, well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's supposed to be the process. So even if somebody didn't follow that, if somebody reached out to me about something on bylaw charter review, I'm going to go to Jeff and say, this isn't mine, this is yours.
all right, I'm not going to, I don't think it's as complete without the last line, so.
I will say that I'm going to make sure I hold the tape for this meeting so that 2 years from now, when I come to the select board with an issue and I get told it's not in my charge, I'm going to have my tape ready.
Yeah, and
So-
rightly so. Can beat us
So I'm
with it.
okay with taking, personally, I'm okay with taking that line out. And in the sense of we will work together.
Right. Michael?
I don't have a problem if it stays in there, it goes. I definitely respect Noreen's opinion on
Yep.
this. The liaison is a conduit.
Yes.
to
And
the
I would
full
agree
bo-
with you.
To the full board for the committee. And it really, we are trying to get back to where the liaison is the one that is talking to the committee and then going back to the chair of the board and figuring it out.
And having sat on the board for a number of years, the liaison, while it wasn't in the charges of the individual committees, the liaison was supposed to be attending and being that resource. Now what you're doing is you're just really formalizing that. So it wasn't in all the charges, because I know that. And I think this is just a matter of formalizing that process.
Because the liaison policy is crystal clear.
Yes, it is.
It's one of our only policies
That's crystal clear.
So,
Well, and
again,
yeah.
so the
No, go
board,
ahead.
maybe the board should straw poll on whether they want it in or want it out. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and I think that, just to clarify though, now that we're going down the discussion on liaisons, I also would say when you look at that in the charter, right, it doesn't mean that the liaison should be at every single meeting. The liaison is available to you if you need more information or something that the liaison can facilitate, or if you have an issue that you've asked them to come and give info or help. But ultimately, the liaison is just that, is a conduit, so.
So one more thing, and it's been a pleasure working with you as your liaison, and I hope you all feel the same way. I think the other part of this that I would like to add, just to clarify, is it's the chair who's supposed to speak to the liaison, who then is supposed to go to the select board. And maybe if that line said the chair would then go to the select board, because as I read this, it looks like anybody from the committee could write a letter to the select board. And I think there needs to be a procedure that's tight and neat, so that, as you put it, not everybody's tripping over each other and sending multiple emails, and I feel this wasn't a reasonable amount of time, but, so that's why I think it should be removed, but I certainly wouldn't die on the hill if some language wanted to be changed.
I just want to follow up on that, though. Like,
Sure.
if we were going to put that in here, and I don't have a problem either, but if we're going to do it there, it needs to be everywhere.
Everywhere.
Because it goes back to the template.
right.
Right? Because we've been moving forward with this and, trying to clean it up and make it a template. So it shouldn't be in just theirs then, it should be in others. So, I guess that's going back to the original discussion. Do we put it in there, or are we gonna say, we're trying to clean this up, we're trying to make the liaisons work together with the committees, and vice versa? And if we have a problem, then do we start changing the template and adding that into every charge?
And I would say that In the same way that the liaison is basically the conduit to the board, the chair from the committee is the conduit to the liaison. So I don't think that any chair should just be running wild with ideas, that they should be coming out of a committee meeting, a discussion, et cetera. So,
100% agree.
so I think it really is, it's the committee is sending information to the chair, to the liaison, through a single person.
That's correct.
Right,
But-
yes.
Yep. So I think the rest of it is great. And if we want to do a motion to approve as amended with,
I think that,
Sorry.
I think that they're, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, they're meeting anyway. They have a current charge, so this is new. Maybe we get a clean copy for our next meeting and vote
I'm
that.
not sure we have a charge for this committee. I was told that in our history, we don't have one.
So is
So
it-
we thought we'd create one to help you out.
Is it important for us to make a motion on amendment and vote it tonight to you or the next?
Not critical to me. I mean, I've got it on my computer, so I can just make this change, send it back to Julie, and if you want to then vote on it next meeting with a clean copy, fine.
And Noreen, did you have an additional Okay.
That's a long time ago, and,
Yeah.
I mean,
Now we know you're not tripping over each other.
yeah,
so if Linda could amend, send to me,
yep.
stick with the procedure here, and then I will send it to the rest of the board, and then hopefully next week we can get it voted on.
Perfect.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now.
We all good?
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Thank you, Linda.
Madam Chair, given the next document is much longer than the last couple, would it be okay to take D out of order
Yeah.
and take up the Community Center Facilities Committee charge now while
Yes.
we're on charges?
Yeah.
We can do the rest of them, actually, if we wanted to.
Yeah, we could actually take care of everything else and then
Quickly
come
and
back
then
to the
come
other,
yeah.
so that anybody else who's waiting.
And I have no comments on the Facility Committee charge. I read through it, I worked with Carolyn,
Yeah.
and she did an outstanding job with her committee on the charge.
Just pulling mine up. I didn't have any comments either.
I had one question about reorganization under committee members' composition and operation. I see that there's staggered 3-year terms, but there's no mention of annual reorganization with chair, vice chair, and clerk.
All right, I didn't say that, yeah.
So if we could just add that.
Okay,
I didn't have any other, I think it's perfectly done other than that.
okay. Are you good with
Yeah,
that, Michael?
Motion on
Yeah.
that one?
I move that we approve the Community Center's Facility Committee charge as presented with the one amendment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
3-0, Joe.
I move that we approve, Michael, do you want to approve these?
Go ahead.
Okay. I move that we approve the following
Hit by
committee.
Elizabeth.
What's that?
I don't want to get hit by Elizabeth.
I move that we approve the following committee appointments as recommended by the interview committee. Mary Ann Campagna, Housing Committee, term to be discussed. Matt Hemian, Housing Committee, term also to be discussed. I move that we approve a 2024.
Can we take-
Yeah.
Do you want to take that
stop,
one?
Yeah.
So I'll second that for discussion, and we're just gonna have to work with Dawn and staff. We didn't get that recommendation from staff, because there's some, they're not the full 3-year terms, they're picking up where somebody left off.
Okay.
So we'll have to get that to you to distribute to the 2 new members,
Okay,
all right? And staff will do that. Right,
okay. So those terms just need to be provided for.
right. So with that, so I seconded the motion for discussion, so I'm
I
ready.
have no more discussion.
Okay. Well, I think as long as we get the definitive dates from staff, we can move forward and vote them in.
That
So,
was in my motion.
We can vote them in, because it's just, we're just gonna,
that's what I mean. We'll just defer to staff dates. So,
Yeah.
okay, so moved and seconded. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we approve a 2024 Class 2 used car dealer and Class 4 auto repair license renewal for Bassel Brothers Incorporated, DBA United Gas 570 Route 28. I also move that we approve a 2024 Class 4 auto repair license renewal for VTech Auto Center LLC, 805 Route 28.
Hang on, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff.
Joe?
I would recommend
Sorry.
because of.
One at a time.
One at a
Yep.
time.
I'll
Okay.
second his first motion.
My first motion.
So the first motion was on F. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve a 2024 Class 4 auto repair license renewal for VTech Auto Center LLC, 805 Route 28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve a 2024 annual common viculars license renewal for CDVT Corp., DBA Heart of the Sea, 1421 Orleans Road, Harwich.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, we're back to C, correct?
Yes, we are.
Discussion on bylaw charter review committee report dated January 9th, 2024. Comments?
I'll just open by saying a lot of work done by this committee, an awful lot of work and a lot of great work. And watching the meetings, some really good collaborative efforts. Linda taking the charge and putting this all together in a neat package should be commended. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the work for the entire committee. And now we can
Yep.
jump in.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, of course.
Michael, any comments?
Yes. In no particular order, topics for future discussion and consideration. And I'm really looking just for clarification. It says Charter Commission purview under 3 and 4. What does that mean?
It means that those kind of changes can only go through a charter commission.
Okay. Well, given the fact that we don't have one, should we keep those in there for now or put those into, well, I guess leave them alone?
The whole purpose of that was just to indicate that, and just for the public's viewing, we've only gone through the first 4 sections. We haven't gone through the entire charter. So the lady who was going to be commenting on Finance Committee or whatever else, capital outlay, we haven't gotten there yet. So that's why there are no recommendations in here for those. But we wanted to get some kind of report as to what we were doing and what we had been discussing and possible, changes or issues being brought up. We wanted to get something to you in January. We didn't want to wait for a whole year or 2 years to go by. These kind of topics that are under future discussion are, nobody's got a pony in that race of any of these, but we also have come up with these type of issues and topics as we've had our discussions. So we have no recommendations on things like term limits or anything else, but they are topics that we think should have some level of a future, more robust discussion.
Yeah, and I would like to add one on,
Sure.
on our form of government. Whether or not we go to a town manager, but in general, form of government. Linda, on the positions, which I believe is 452.
Where are you and what page?
So chapter 4, Michael? No.
I am under, chapter 4, the town administrator.
Yep.
So 452.
Yep.
Proposed language, is this the same conversation that we debated heavily last year before town meeting about making each employee have a separate article for approval by town meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know you weren't happy with it.
It's not that I'm not happy with it. I think, as I expressed last year, it's micromanaging at its best. We pay a professional town administrator to run a town, and a big deal was made out of that last year by several people. Not one question from anybody on town meeting floor at all about the 8 positions. 8 positions. So I'm against that. I'm against even bringing it forward.
Okay, but this is our report to you.
Do you want my
So,
opinion on the report, or should I just
no,
keep that to myself?
no, you can keep that to yourself, but you just said you didn't want it in the report. we wrote this report.
I'm just giving the board my feedback
All
and
right.
you my feedback. If that's not appropriate, I
No,
won't.
that's,
No, you're just giving comments on the
Sure.
actual report.
The 2-2-2, sorry, I'm jumping around. And I don't, when you guys asked about page, are you asking about page in the agenda?
no, on
Chapter
this
two.
report.
It's,
Town meeting.
yeah, Chapter 2, Town Meeting.
Two dash what?
I think it's the second page. Well, it's the third because the memo. Oh, no, it's the second. Second page.
So two dash what?
I was on 2-2-2, but just give me a second to reread it.
Got it.
Warrants, mailing warrants to everybody. Have we looked into the cost of doing that? Is there any thought that went into, or what was the thought that went into mailing warrants to every house?
Part of the rationale is not everybody, sorry, Bill, not everybody gets the Chronicle to their household. Yes, I am sure. And he's shocked. But not everybody gets the Chronicle. And we thought that we did not have a specific discussion on cost. It will cost something. But we also felt that it would increase transparency if people had a copy of the warrant mailed to them rather than picking up the warrant on town meeting night, and then you're trying to read through 52 articles, particularly the ones that are bylaws, which can be huge, and trying to assess whether or not they like the budget and they want to vote for it, regardless of our professionals. It just seems like it would increase transparency and have a better educated public show up at town meeting.
And I could agree with you on part of that. I just would like to understand the cost associated
Yep.
with this. Because we all know that we get maybe 500 people at town meeting.
Yep.
So the thought of how much we're gonna send out, and I would think maybe picking them up at town hall 2 weeks before would be an option
That's another option that,
we should consider. But I agree with you, getting it a week before or even 3 days before, not really understanding the articles, certainly prolongs town meeting.
and even though we do print it in the newspaper, when you get to the budget, my tired little eyes cannot read it. It's too teeny. So to actually, I like your idea, Michael, of if you had the warrant available 2 weeks beforehand for people to pick up, that's plenty of time for them to read it and assess what they think of the articles.
So just to follow up on that, because, there's two things on that. I know that in terms of our timeline, Joe, 2 weeks prior to doesn't impact, correct? Like if we have printed warrants here 2 weeks ahead of time, this are gonna, in terms of getting it to the printer.
It shouldn't, I will add, however, the existing language is the problem we have. It's the 14 days in the newspaper that's problematic. So anything other than that is a major enhancement. And no, it would not impact on printing or anything else.
Not sure if
Because-
I agree with that, because it says at least 14 days before the meeting. It doesn't say 14 days, period. It says at least. So it could be 20 days beforehand, as long as it's at least 14. And I think that's what the charter says.
Well, what I
Madam
just,
Chair,
sorry,
if I
go ahead.
could.
Yeah.
I'm providing an observation that staff will tell you that the current language is very problematic. So we can get
Itself?
into agree, disagree, but to your question about the mailing, if that's the way you go, no, it dovetails with everything we do schedule-wise.
So I just want to follow up my input on, the mailing. We used to mail the warrant out, but I will say this. In terms of the amount of money that will cost us and how many people throw it out, they don't even read it, I would really rather say that we would have them available at town hall and we would spend the money on sending a letter saying if you'd like, that doesn't cost much. You're talking about a warrant costs more money to mail. Just notify the people. You can come by town hall or the community center and pick up your warrant. It's also available online, so you don't even have to come pick it up. But that's a way to educate people and not cost us so much money, because the people who want it will find it. And that's unfortunate to say, right? But it's true. So I think, where we're trying to be fiscally responsible on so many other levels, I remember getting it myself long before I was on the select board, and I'll be honest, I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't, it's true.
I have to say, Julie, I'm a wonk. I read every page.
Well, I do now, I'm not saying that.
Even then I
just-
did.
I'm just saying, instead of spending money on that, I'd rather see us do a notification that was a little cheaper to send than the warrant, so. And Bill, I do believe everybody has a subscription to the Chronicle.
I get mine free at Town Hall.
Okay.
I only have a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead.
2-3-6, allowing for flexibility in the scheduling for town meeting. I absolutely agree with, we've talked about that for more than 1 year.
Yes, we
I
have.
think that's a great thing. 2, 431. Are you all trying to figure out what was going through my head when I was making my notes today? Because I'm going section to section and then back. I have no idea what I was thinking.
I wasn't going to point that out.
431. I was looking for an explanation on the addition on the bottom. The town administrator shall comply with all provisions of this charter, bylaws, and general laws.
Is there anyone in two members of my committee are here, and we did post a meeting. So does anyone like to comment on that? I think Noreen was one who wanted that in there, as did Sandy Hall. Not you? It was just to make it clear that our chief administrator would be complying with all provisions of all of our bylaws, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, just to offer my opinion that I think Joe's very well, this town administrator is very well versed on it, and that's part of the job, is understanding how you're going to manage. I do have the one question that I believe Martha wants to ask, so I'm not going to steal that from Martha. No, you go ahead. I want you to explain it, because you started and I shut you out. If that's okay with the chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so what I would like to see in Part 1, Chapter 7, 7.2, when we talk about all of the financial items that should be in the warrant, I think we're missing debt. I've been an advocate for putting some debt numbers in the warrant, because that's where we make the decision about debt. And while, like I said, our debt today is not an issue, we're doing fine with our debt. As we go through the sewering project, there may come a time where we have to make some hard decisions about how we spend our money. So what I would like to see included is, what is the debt outstanding as of the most current date, whether that's 12/30 or some other date, whatever that is. What debt has been committed but not yet issued. So for example, last year we committed $50 million for Phase 3. It's probably not going to be that big a number, but at some point, some number is going to go into the debt schedule. What the annual debt servicing expenses are, which is basically how much are we paying in principal and interest every year on the debt. And then what is the debt service ratio, which is the expenses divided by the operating budget. And I think the tricky part, to make sure we are comparing apples to apples, is how does the school fit into that? And I'm not as educated about whether this Monomoy district has their own financing authority or it's through the town of Harwich. I don't know that. So, maybe it is the operating budget for the town and then the school separately with the same numbers and then the total. Because if we had to build a school and put in a sewer system at the same time, it would be challenging. And so I just think that to have a full picture of our financial health debt is important in the warrant where we make the decision on town meeting about more debt.
So just to follow up on that then, Linda, you made the point that, you haven't gotten there yet, so as you go through.
I had misspoke, believe it or not.
Oh.
I agree. I think that we missed putting in here that under Chapter 7.2, that we should have very specific items in the warrant, and I think we missed the debt. We should have put the debt in here. Because our proposed wording said the budget, including receipts, anticipated receipts, the capital plan, the statement of activities on the revolving funds, sources and uses of funds, and there should be debt information. Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Michael?
Yeah, and I would just say that charter change, great, but this town administrator and past boards have gone a long way to adding a lot more information to the warrants. So, you know, whether it be the chart on the employees.
There is debt information in the annual report, but that document's not available necessarily.
No, and I would just say, so my point is, I think we might be able to work with the town administrator and the finance director to get some of that information put together for town meeting. The board obviously.
Even if you want to do, you know, if you decide that, you know, this is our suggestion, it goes into the warrant, but if you wanted to have an addendum and say, here's a bunch of additional information, which is the debt and the this and the that, absolutely. But I think what we're trying to get across is the information is hard to find now. And I know that we were trying to hunt for the revolving funds information. I don't think there's been a lot of information on the revolving funds. So I think we're just trying to say, this is the type of thing that people are interested in, but the debt's a good one. We missed that.
So then, just back to clarifying for public, you know, this is a report, and just to be clear, we're not making any changes, we're listening to the report, we're listening to the suggestions, and obviously the conversation will continue, so I just want to point that out.
I would like to say that I do think that Section 271-16, it's the last page of the report, which is in the bylaws, and the original wording, current wording is that, you know, the motions, all the motions and votes shall be made available upon request of any registered voter. And in 2019, at the annual town meeting, we changed that to say that all the votes by individual person for the Select Board and the Finance Committee were supposed to be printed in the warrant. I think that that is a change that you should be thinking about for this time, because it's a bylaw change and all it needs is town meeting. But the bylaw should reflect what town meeting voted on an article now 4 years ago. So I'm just saying that while we're not expecting you to immediately write all these and all of a sudden they're all going to appear in the warrant, this is our report for our recommendations. That one, I think, should be acted on.
It'd be nice to get some things done.
Yeah.
Julie, could you, through the town administrator, get that information of what that article was, what it said, and consider whether or not we're going to put an article forward this year on that?
Yeah, we can work on that. Joe, we'll talk to you about that.
Yep.
I have a few, Madam Chair, if I could. Linda, thank you. And could you talk to me a little bit about 271-3, town moderator, and non-voters shall be allowed to address the meeting at the discretion of the moderator. So as I'm reading that, it sounds like it's being taken out of the hands of the voters on town meeting floor and given to the moderators, to the moderator to essentially decide.
If you recall, I believe at the last town meeting, there was a little bit of a hoop-de-doo when it was requested that the superintendent of Monomoy Regional School District speak to some topic. And there was kind of a hue and cry. It was a little embarrassing, personally, I thought, from the floor that they didn't want to hear from him. So we thought we would strengthen the town moderator's ability to allow people to speak.
So department heads and people who have subject matter information specific to a specific article on town meeting floor, I feel should have the opportunity to speak, as it only can help. Where I think I'm getting caught up is allowing the moderator then to be the arbiter of all others who want to speak as well. I do remember last town meeting where I think one of our teachers who got up to speak. I believe it was on that school choice conversation, right? And overwhelmingly, the public said no.
Yes.
So I don't have a position on this one way or the other. I'm just looking for clarification as to, you would like the moderator to be the sole arbiter of.
Yes, on non-voters,
Okay.
Shall be allowed to address at the discretion of the moderator. And that the moderator shall allow a non-resident department head to speak on any topic which may, impact that department or answer questions from the floor.
So the moderator will have to determine whether or not the person who's asking to speak as a department head is really germane to the conversation, right?
In the same way that the moderator now says that this is the article, and somebody brings up some question that doesn't have anything to do with the article, and the moderator will say, that is not in the scope of the article for the discussion.
Sure. Do you want to add to that before I go?
Well, no, I just want to say, I think that clarification is important, because it's saying, department heads and anybody who's not, that was embarrassing and ridiculous
100%,
last year,
yeah.
so I think it does need to be corrected, and our moderator is a very rational, capable person who can certainly keep everything on course.
I guess my point is, I like where you're going with it. I think a little fine tuning probably would be great. Back to the warrants, I think more information to the public, I think, is a fantastic idea. Talk to me about the fall town meeting.
Well, even though I'm not a born here person, been here for over 20 years, and the one complaint that I hear every single year is town meeting is too long. Nobody wants to come and spend 3 to 4 nights, blah, blah, blah. So we thought that if we went back to what was in the 1986 original charter, which was a spring town meeting and a fall town meeting, that moving the bylaws, et cetera, to a fall town meeting, not saying that you can't have any financial thing in the fall town meeting, but trying to split the warrant, so if you're going to end up with 60 articles anyways, because we seem determined to have 60 articles. But if you could put 30 in the spring, 30 in the fall, that would by itself might make more people come out, because they know they're only going to be there for one night and maybe half of another night. We've been running 11 o'clock, 3 nights running. I'm getting too old for this.
Go ahead.
No,
Michael.
I feel that it's a good suggestion, but I really believe it should be up to the town administrator and the executive body on whether or not we need one. I don't think it should be, personally, don't think it should be charter driven, and petition articles. I'd rather see something on limit the amount of time people can speak, because we go way over the 5-minute mark on a lot of this, and a lot of it's somebody's own science that they're reading off of many, many, many articles, and it goes on. If you look at the time it takes us to get through 1 through 10, which are the most important articles, where we spend $80 million, it takes about an hour, maybe. I don't even think it's that. So we seem to get hung up on, in my mind, we get hung up a lot on these petition articles that are two sides debating with each other with their own science.
And sometimes the bylaw changes can generate a lot of discussion.
I'd be open for it, Linda. I just think it should be based on the year and not demanded by way of a charter, personally.
Jeff?
Go ahead if you have a...
No,
Okay.
I
And
don't
then,
disagree.
to Martha's point, the debt, I think more information, more transparency is exactly what we need here in this town to try to get more people more involved in town meeting and town government and being a bigger part of our community. Last one, Linda, is, and this is actually for me to understand a little bit better of the procedure. The Board of 353, under Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen shall have the authority to designate from time to time one or more of its members to sign warrants. And your new language is the Select Board Chair shall have the authority to designate from time to time one or more of its members. My question there is that simply removing a board vote to allow the chair to do that? That's all that,
Taking bureaucracy out of it.
that's all I wanted to make sure is I read
You know,
what
the town administrator's on vacation, you have
Yeah.
to make sure you have an article, you have to have something in your agenda so that somebody can do this and do that, and notify 4,700 people.
Yep.
Streamline that.
And I like streamlining and making it more efficient, and I think we do a lot of things here that maybe could be taken a good harder look at so that we can be a little more efficient as well. So I like that one. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you, Linda, again.
Oh, it's the committee, it was a huge committee
I
effort.
know it was, I know.
It is a lot of information and good food for thought.
So the liaison through the chair of the committee, please, thank you.
Do you have any?
The
Okay.
liaison thanks you.
Thank you.
All right. So, obviously, we'll talk about that further at some point, all the different items.
May I ask what the time frame is for us to begin to, only because I'm new here, what would be the time frame that we would look to bring this back to a public meeting and have a discussion as to how to tidy this up and what may go forward and what may not?
I'm just thinking it's what already, end of January. Joe, what do you think a good time frame is to bring back any further discussion on this item?
Well, it's not going to be a helpful reply, but sooner rather than later. These all require intersection with town meetings, so.
Right. So,
We're going to talk later this week about the budget process and updates on that, so it would be very soon, I would think.
so probably sometime in, like, let's just say,
Late January, which is next week, or early February, which is the week after.
that's what I was afraid you were gonna say. Okay, so we'll need to bring it back, and then let's just say, oh, sorry, Noreen, in the next couple weeks. Fair enough to say.
I just wanted to make one general statement, which is not probably going to win me too many popularity contests, but it's the same statement I said to the committee when I joined them last summer. Again, we don't know what we don't know. Thank you, Jeff, for acknowledging a lot of hard work, especially on Linda's part and everything else. But your guys' opinions are great. Sorry to say, you're amateurs. You know, I'm an amateur. So I get very nervous about plowing ahead with only the advice of legal. Because, I mean, take, for example, what legal did to us in terms of the capital plan changes over the last few years. All you have to look is that section of the charter, and it went back and forth, our legal department, like 8 different times, changing things back and forth. So again, I'm going to say, if somebody doesn't make a decision about, you know, a contractor, a counselor to guide people to make these moves, that's an awful lot of work to put the town through to rewrite that kind of a section based on amateurs who did a lot of work, looked at a lot of other towns' charters, looked at Mass General laws, did all they could as amateurs to do this, but I'll just let you ponder that one. Thanks.
Yeah,
You will be talking.
right, so I'm just gonna, go ahead, Anita, because I'm gonna follow up with my own comment, but,
This is just very brief. Anita Doucette, Bylaw Charter Review Committee. I'll give you a little history. Michael, I agree with you as far as town meeting is concerned. History. We had our elections on Monday. Our town meeting started on Tuesday. And if there was any override elections, we had elections the following June. History. So that was changed to have our town meeting start on Monday. The election happened the 3rd week, and just one town meeting instead of having a fall town meeting and a spring town meeting, because they felt that it would just get everything done at once. That's just a little history. So that's how the change came about.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just to point out, back to Noreen's earlier question, I'm going to be reaching out to our person who's going to be working on the bylaw charter review revisions too, that we were talking with on our behalf, on the select board's behalf. And so I'll be doing that this week from the FOG group.
Will we have any access to those people? Because we'd love to have some insight.
So I'll be talking with him, and then I'll be reporting back to the board, and then we'll go from there.
That would be great, because I know that, as Noreen said, we're all amateurs at this. So we have been reaching out and looking at a variety of other towns. How is their charter language written? Oh, that looks really good, let's try that. We've really had a lot of conversations. We've talked to several committee chairs and other committees and commissions that's within town, because we wanted to get as much information as possible and not work in a vacuum. So we would really love to have access to someone who's going to tell us, you can come up with an idea and somebody says, Mass General Law 452.7653, you can't do it that way.
Right.
Well, then that ends the conversation.
No, understood, totally.
So we would
understood.
really appreciate access to that. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome. Anything further on this topic? No? Okay.
Good start.
All right, so town administrators report, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, last week, the Commonwealth was all situated in Boston for the annual Mass Municipal Association's business meeting and conference. I will tell you that two significant things that were announced then that are hopeful. First is what the administration is referring to as the Municipal Empowerment Act. And they have three key documents. I think it's about 15 pages of data I was going over today. But this is the Healy-Driscoll administration's follow-up to the Baker-Polito administration on municipal modernization. And it is, I think, wonderfully municipally based. There's a lot of proposed items in their legislation that are meant to help towns, so cautiously optimistic about some of those items. In addition, the governor did confirm, as I think she also said in her State of the Commonwealth address, that despite the 9 C cuts that we saw with one of our fire department grants, usually when the governor has to do 9 C cuts, it's a harbinger that local aid and other things may be cut. Excuse me. They have announced in her budget that local aid is looking to go up 3%. Now, local aid, I've learned a long time ago, doesn't really have the same effect on Cape Cod as it does over the bridges. However, that's a canary in the coal mine. So the fact that the canary came up from the coal mine and its 3% increase is cautiously optimistic for me. So some good messages. So it'll be interesting to see how their Municipal Empowerment Act legislation goes. But again, it's all items that could come back to you folks to find other revenue sources and other powers that you could take on.
Great, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, thanks for sending me.
Selectmen's report, Michael?
Have nothing.
Jeff?
The only thing I want to say is thank you to Dan Pelletier and the entire water department. There was a break on Freeman Street and Hoyt Road on Saturday, and they jumped right on it. Did an amazing job of fixing the situation, notifying our residents, and I just, once again, they got their opportunity to shine, and they did. Thank you to them.
Thank you, Jeff. And I have nothing.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, I gotta sign that.
Give the signature.